Hi, friends. Welcome back from lunch. We are going to do the second portion of our workshop today. Yep, I can share these slides for you in here. This is what the tentative schedule. We're going to talk about computer vision, some cool things you can do there. We're going to have a break. We'll talk about natural language processing, which is a sort of a shorter conversation. And then we'll have some conversation about AI. And then if we want, we can do a knowledge check, and it's just like more of a fun game that we can play. But it's just more of kind of touching on the things that we've talked about throughout this entire workshop. And then from there, we'll talk about next steps. So really what you guys can expect next and where we can go from there. So talking about computer vision, computer vision is a tool that we can use, especially in Azure, that can do a ton of things. One of those things is just image classification. So it can take in an image. It is a trained machine learning model that can classify images based on their contents. So if we wanted to talk about like a traffic monitoring solution, you might use image classification to classify images based on the type of vehicle they contain, such as taxis, buses, cyclists, and so on. Let's say you're using like a toll bridge and you don't want to send out a bill to the city for using a bus on the toll bridge. Using this image classification, it can say if anything's a bus, it doesn't send a bill or it doesn't count. It's just part of the city usage. Within computer vision, we can also take it a step further. So here's just image classification. We can take it a step further and do some object detection. Now what this will do is this will make sort of a square around the object, and it'll allow us to detect certain things. Whether if you see this video, we've got a car, a cyclist, a bus. And so we can do this detecting. Now it does make like a square, so it's not, and we'll see the difference here in a bit, but we can detect objects within my image, which is pretty sweet. Now, taking it a step further, we have semantic segmentation. So with this guy, it was allowing us to detect an object. We see this square has, this square of this car also has some road, also one of the road lines, right? So it's not just the object. There's a square around the object, but it has some different things. This one looks like it has a person in it, or maybe part of a traffic light. When we talk about semantic segmentation, it actually just takes the pixels associated with our object and only highlights those. So here we've got our car. Our car does not have a square around it. It doesn't have part of the road. It's strictly just each piece of the car, which can, be quite nice whenever we are really trying to identify only, we don't want anything that isn't what we're looking for, isn't a car, isn't a bus, anything like that. It only focuses on just that object we're trying to detect. Computer vision can also do image analysis. So we can take in an image and basically spit out a sentence of what is happening within the image, which is pretty interesting. All right, so on the right, we have this image of a person with a dog, right? And it'll read this image and it'll come up with the sentence of a person with a dog on a street, right? Which is pretty advanced. And if you think about it, the idea that this model had to train and learn what a dog is, learn what a person is, what a street is, the idea of what it looks like them walking, all of these different things can be really, really useful. And when we do image analysis, it includes tags, which will allow us maybe and put different things with like taxi or dog or, suit, something of that nature that allows us to categorize our images. So let's say we had 1,000 images and I wanted all the images of a man walking a dog or a person walking a dog. What it would do, because it'll take all those tags or those images that have the tag of dog, and it will generate and bring those up, which is kind of interesting. We'll look at in just a second some of the tools. And the great thing about these computer vision tools is you don't have to train a model. Microsoft provides the model that's already trained. They've already spent the money and done the work of training a model, which is very expensive and very time consuming. And it's already done that. And it's just a tool that you can use for Azure to do different things. It can also do, from a computer vision side, it can do face detection, analysis, and recognition. Now, there are tools that we'll see that Microsoft actually provides. It's sort of better for facial recognition. If you're just wanting to detect if there's a face in your image, then okay, computer vision's great for that. There is a facial recognition software that Microsoft has that, you sort of think of opening your phone with your facial recognition. It's a little bit more detailed, but it can, same sort of thing, just take the square of where the face is and detect if there's a face in the image or not, which is, it can also infer details such as age and emotional state. So if you're looking up a photo of, is this person sad, or how old are they? Just pretty interesting, and can be, this is something that when we talk about the responsibility of AI, we have to be very, very smart, right? Because let's say it detects, we're using this software. Let's say there's a video for somebody robbing a convenience store, and then they run the model and say, they give an image of a person and it facial recognition, and it says, oh, this is the same person, even though it's sort of blurry, but the computer says, no, this is the same person. If that were allowed, right, and we were to hold that, even if the computer's wrong, let's say it's 99.99%, but the 0.01% occurred on this instance, right? That person might face jail time because our model didn't detect correctly. So we have to be very, very smart with how and when we utilize this. There's also something within computer vision that is called OCR, which is optical character recognition. Basically what it can do, and this is a really, really popular thing now, it's becoming more popular, is you can take a picture and it can actually read the letters within your image. So in this case, on our right, we have the Toronto Dominion Bank. So through this image, it can detect that this has the words the Toronto Dominion Bank. And so it can do this and sort of scan and see different things. You can start taking these photographs like road signs, sort of what it showed in that initial video of the girl who's running and she doesn't know which street she's on, and it goes and it just reads a road sign. Optical character recognition is really, really big for that, or storefronts. It can also do like invoices, forms, and letters. Now there is a tool. I do want to preface and say computer vision is a massive general tool. And within that, you have more focused tools that we'll talk about. So from like a receipt, there is a whole like tool just curated for, you're traveling and your company's paying for everything and you're uploading receipts, things like that. So that is something that does exist, but computer vision does do a ton of things. So computer vision, like I said, is a service that's already created. It's already been trained by Microsoft to analyze image and videos, which it can extract descriptions, tags, objects, and text, right? So that's a great thing that's already built, right? It's just out of the box, it works. Now you can also do something called custom vision. So let's say I wanted to create a application that, let's say, before somebody got on my computer, let's say I had a little brother that was always trying to get in my computer and wreck my stuff. Well, let's say before that, I wanted to create an application before somebody went in my computer. It did facial recognition, and I wanted to train it on my little brother's face. So that way, if it detected his face, he couldn't get on my computer, right? That's something called custom vision. So if you wanted to train it on your own images, on custom images of your friends, your family, you can use something called custom vision. Now, what I was talking about with the facial and the form is there's two other ones that you can do. It's called face, and that one's more curated for facial detection and facial recognition. And then the form recognizer is, again, the one that is more curated towards receipt uploads, taking information from receipts and forms and invoices. But we'll talk about all of those. So again, talking about computer vision.
Will?
Yeah.
Can I ask a question here?
Yeah.
So let's say I'm trying to create a machine learning algorithm that looks at x-rays of lungs and says, okay, this person has cancer, this one doesn't, this one does, so on and so forth. Which one do I have to use one of these for? Does Azure allow me to introduce my own model type thing, or?
Yeah, that would be more of what we talked about with our classification, where you'd have your own model. And you have your own points that trains it to,
But it'd still be reading the X-ray. So that would still be a classification problem. I just have to
yeah,
mix in the reading the X-ray part somehow.
yeah, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah. Mhm. So I would say if any of them, it would be more of your custom vision. So if you wanted to use that to send in an image, now I would say, yeah, I mean, you would use custom vision if you wanted to create your own. I want to submit an image of a biopsy or, an X-ray, and this is what I want to train it to be. That anytime you see this dark dot in a lung, that is a signal of lung cancer, you would use custom vision for that. But it would be more so your classification model that is trained as well. So it would be two of those.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Great question.
Also, for Tesla, like a driverless car, what kind of vision they use?
Yeah, so they would use something like computer vision, right? Where they
Okay.
can, let's go back. They can detect things like this. They do object detection. Now Tesla has their own, computer vision that they've trained and that they've trained and created, right? Their own AI. This is just a tool that Azure does, but it would be same sort of thing where they detect objects. Basically, the sort of the way it works is they would typically hire somebody to go in and see a bunch of images, and then they just label them, right? So there'd be an image of a person walking, and then they would label, they put a square, and this is a person, and this is the crosswalk, and this is a street light. And so they are taking squares and putting them on every single aspect of an image, and then it trains and the model learns this is the dynamics of a person. This is the dynamics of a crosswalk or of a street light. Now, I will say, like, if you're introducing custom vision, in order for your, and what the beautiful part of computer vision is, you need thousands of images to get a really accurate model. Like, you need a lot of practice, basically. And the other thing is not only practice from, seeing the same thing, but from different angles, from different views, right? If you always have a view of a person walking from the side, your computer, if your person, is, side profile, your car's here, and then they're sort of perpendicularly walking, then let's say your person turns and is facing you and their body is longer, right? If you've never trained your model on that view, it's not going to know what that is, right? It's going to get confused and maybe say that's not a person. So somebody was standing in front of your car looking at you, because we only turned our model on side views, it might not say that that's a person. It might keep going and hit them, right? And so we have to be sure that if we're using this computer vision or custom vision, not only do we train, have thousands of images, we have to have thousands of images from different views and different angles. Think about, like, whenever you set up facial recognition. So like when I did on my iPhone, I had to go around my face, right? It had to see all sorts of features, not just me looking at it. It had to see from this side to this side, to this side, to this side. So that way it could know what is me and what isn't me, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So like 360 vision.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Like you have to have it from all sorts of different angles, views, heights, et cetera, et cetera. Because if let's say you trained it, even another example would be, let's say you trained it on the average person of like 5'9", maybe, and all of a sudden you have somebody who's 7 foot, or you have somebody who is like 3'8", right? And like might not be able to distinguish because we don't have all the different types of humans there are. Same thing comes with like people of ethnicity, of different ethnicities, right? If we're training it all to detect people who are white, if somebody of color is crossing the street, it might not know, because it's like all it knows as a human is what you've given it, which is a white person. And so then when somebody of color comes, then it might not know that it's a human, right? So we have to make sure that if we're doing custom vision, we give it a massive data set to work from. Cool. Now, I just wanted to show you sort of the different demos that it has. And talking about computer vision, here's some cool things that you can do. So let's say we give it this image right here. what it will do is it takes this image, and again, like I said, it creates these tags. So it is 100% confident that there's a building within this image. Even though it's sort of blurry, it's 100% confident there. 100% confident there's a car, that there's a road, that is outdoors. So these are those tags, right? If I have a bunch of images and I wanted I wanted to filter by an outdoor car with a building on it, this would come up, right? Because it has these tags, a land vehicle, and then it's got different degrees of confidence. So it's 16% confident that there's a curb somewhere on this. I don't see a curb, but maybe right there. But it's 16% confident, 36% confident that there's a sidewalk. You don't really see a sidewalk, but so you can see that there are tags that's like, nope, I know that this is a building and I know that this is a car and a road. And there are some that's like, it might be like, this is sort of a taxi. It doesn't say taxi, but it's yellow. Could just be a yellow car, but it's 60% confident that it's a taxi. It'll also give a description, right? So a yellow car on the street, which is cool. So it gives that description of what this image is doing. And then again, it will say, if this is racy or adult content, right? So if there is adult content or if it is racy content, it'll give you, it'll allow you to filter through. So let's say you created a social media and you wanted to make sure that you didn't allow people to post adult content on your Twitter, right? This model would be able to detect that image. And every time an image is uploaded, let's say I went through my model, and if it detected true with anything 70% and above, let's say, then you didn't allow them to post it, sort of thing. So computer vision can do a ton of stuff. It can take an image like this and then it'll transcript 42 street 42 because it says 42 street and 42 over there. So it gives you all the words. It can also read handwriting, which is really neat. So if it says, here's this handwriting and maybe a recipe or something like that, it can transcribe it for you, which is really, really neat. My wife does this for law school. She writes a bunch of notes. We have a Remarkable tablet where she can handwrite and then it uploads to a Word document. And so all of her notes are now just words in a document. That way she can, write and take care of that. And the last really interesting thing that computer vision does is it's actually trained on thousands of celebrities and thousands of landmarks. So this is obviously the CEO of Microsoft. So what you can do is upload an image. And let's say I wanted to create an application that when people visited the US, if they didn't know what a big, national thing was, they could take a picture of it and it would tell them what that is. I was in Spain. This is a really embarrassing story. And I didn't know I was in Barcelona, and I was 20, sorry. And there was Sagrada de la Familia, which is this really beautiful church. It's a super old church. It's like one of the most historic pieces of Spain. And I walked up and there were a million people that I had no idea what it was. I'd never heard of it. I'd never known it. And I walked up to the lady and said, "Hey, what is this?" And she was actually wildly offended because I had no idea what this was, right? I was just this dumb American. And I wish that there was an app that I could have taken a picture. And then, this was 2013. There was no apps that I could take a picture and then it tell me exactly what this is. And so let's say I wanted to create an application so somebody else didn't have to go through the embarrassment that I did. I could do that by even just using this computer vision, because it recognizes 200,000 celebrities from business, politics, sports, and entertainment, and over 9,000 landmarks around the world. So just by using this tool, a user could submit this. It goes through my tool, me using computer vision, and it spits out, basically it spits out, what it says. Or
Do you have to like upload an image here, or do you just take a picture and?
So yeah, you would upload an image and then it would run through. So like, I'll show you in just a second. Let me just do it. Let me see if I can figure out. I'll show you sort of one that I was working on. So here I am working with, let's see. Okay. I'll show you. So you can use these tools, right? So I have my own Azure account, right? And so here I told you that I was creating that speech recognition service. Here I'm importing this, I'm just importing this tool that's already here, this cognitive service. I'm using the speech one, which we'll talk about in a bit. But all I do is I can then, when I run this, it takes the speech that I say and will print what I'm saying. So let's actually practice this. So if I were to, let's say, what is this called? Oh, I have to. Check, check, check. This is a test to show how we can use Azure services. I used a tool and it says, check, check, check. This is a test to show how we can use Azure services. And then it says because I have it printing where it's hosted. So all I'm doing is using the speech recognition tool from Microsoft. I'm bringing that in. I'm giving it some information. It's reading from my, I have to give it my sub key and then my speech service region. It's reading the information I'm saying, speech recognizer, and then it's putting it through my tool and then doing whatever I say, right? So I'm using it and then I just want it to print the text. Same sort of thing of if I wanted to use computer vision, I would just take an image, I'd push it through that, and then it would generate some response, sort of like an API call. And then I can give that back to my user. Same sort of thing. But that's just a really real life. I was using Azure services right there. And you see that it was 27 lines of code. Like it wasn't a ton of code for me to take speech recognition and then be able to write it down, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. So it's a really cool tool that you can do. We're not doing that. Okay. So now when we're talking about this information, there's a lot of tools that we can do. And I just want to point out that there's specific things that we can use. So let's say I just want to use computer vision. Again, I want to create this app where people can upload a image and I can tell them what landmark that is around the world. Well, let's say I'm a company and all I wanted to do was that, then I would just purchase the service of computer vision. So whenever I just did that thing that I just showed you, it was just the service of speech, right? That's the only point that I'm working. Let's say I was a company that wanted to do that. And let's say another organization wanted to do text analytics or translate text, something like that. I could also opt for the all-inclusive. You can sort of think about it that way. The cognitive services. This is sort of like your bundle. So as we're talking about all this stuff, you will note that cognitive services does include most of all this stuff, or I can do sort of an a la carte. If I wanted to just use something, I could do an a la carte and do computer vision. So just so you know, it might ask, what is, which of these, if you wanted to basically, one part of your organization wants to translate text, one part of your organization wants to identify landmarks, what service would you use? It'd say computer vision, and then it would say cognitive services and maybe something else. And because you have two different things, you're going to want to use cognitive services. So just so you know, as we're talking about these services and what provides cognitive services, is going to be like for every one of them, because it's like your bundle sort of thing. For our computer vision, all we need is a key. So same sort of thing here is we need a key. So this would be my key here. This comes from my .env folder. I'm not going to do this because this is recorded and then you'll take all my subscription money. It'll charge me. This key, what it does is it allows us to identify who is using this tool, right? So I have an account set up with Azure. It's linked to a credit card. You get like $200 free for the first month or something. So whatever, but you can use this key. And then every time this is called, it'll go to your account and it identifies this is the user who's using this service, right? And so it's basically, it's like if you've ever been to a hotel or something and you say, I just want to put this on room 202, right? You don't have to pay for it right there, but it goes to your end bill, same sort of thing. And then an endpoint. So, okay, what am I doing now? Where am I going? What is, what do you want me to do, sort of thing. So that's what computer vision has. And there's great documentation on how do we utilize computer vision in, for Azure. So what it can also do is describe an image. Like I said, it can do some descriptions. It can analyze the photo, give a description from it. It tags visual features. So the image descriptions generated by the computer vision are based on a set of thousands of recognizable objects. Again, this is really just reiterating that this is trained on thousands of photos, thousands of things, to where you don't have to do it yourself, which is really cool. Doug, it looks like you have a question. It looks like you muted, my friend.
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
Yep, I can hear you now.
Does Azure work best with C#, would you say, or just whichever language you're most familiar with?
Yeah, so it actually, great question. They did bring out, I think, Guido von Rossum, who's the creator of Python, I think now works for Microsoft. So it really works for any of the main languages, I would say. Like obviously C#, it's got an upper hand because it's Microsoft's language, but the big thing is adaptation and adoption, right? And so it works in, like, what I just wrote was Python, because that's sort of my bread and butter. And so it works with Python, it works with JavaScript, and it'll tell you. So like if I wanted to do, it'll tell you, it's got great documentation. So if I wanted to utilize this, it'll tell you, like this is the OCR, that again, that's the optical character recognition, image analysis, face detection. So let's say that I wanted to do, like, here's your different languages you can do. So C#, Go, Java, Node, which is just JavaScript, and then Python. So let's say it was Python. Here's the package that I would use if I'm going to do computer vision. And then it talks about the different things I can do, the cognitive services modules, SDK, the different things that I can orient. Whenever I brought mine in, all I had to do was download that into my environment and then import this this class basically, and then I was able to use it. So it can work with any of the main languages. Great question though.
Thanks. That's really cool.
Yeah, the documentation is really cool. It's really easy. Like I said, I had never dealt with that before, so I was like, oh, let's just build it. And it was, I literally built that in probably like beginning to end 45 minutes. But that was just like throwing stuff together and like, what do we do here? There's great documentation and good help there. Cool. So again, it's trained on a bunch of this stuff. It's trained on even dictating if this is a tower or a building, right? It can do those different things. But it will also just provide tags for what it does know. And it returns what we call a bounding box coordinate. So this is the part of the image that is the building. So you'll get the type of object, but you'll receive also a set of coordinates to indicate basically where's that object that we're detecting. So if I'm detecting a building, here's the images and here's the points of where that building actually is, which is kind of cool.
Is this a detecting object used in airplanes when they're flying over?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I would think so, right? Like, yeah, I'm not sure, but I would assume that there's probably something, right? Like if it detects a tower, like beep, 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 right? There's some sort of, or even just another object, right? It's probably more simplistic because you're in the air, you're likely not going to hit things. But if something's close to you, if there's a sensor that's detecting another image or another, sorry, not an image, but another object, it probably gives off some kind of sensor, same sort of thing. Yeah. But probably really big in like helicopters, I would think, probably have this more than probably an airplane. But yeah, same idea. What's also really neat is computer vision can detect brands as well. So like there's a database of thousands of brands globally that you can detect. This would be big, and something I often think about is maybe in a movie, you might want to use computer vision to make sure that you don't have like in Game of Thrones, right? If they would have used computer vision, they would have been able to detect that Starbucks there was a Starbucks cup in the Game of Thrones. There was an episode or a scene that you could see a Starbucks cup and this like old dragony thing, but then there's just Starbucks chilling. Right. And so it's a way that, you know, if you are wanting to make sure you don't get sued because you are using a brand that you're not supposed to and you didn't have access to, you can do that, which is sort of cool. So if you know, upload that, then, you know, you can get a brand from just what brand is this? Or even same sort of thing. Like, you know, if you go to England or Europe and they all have one sort of phone, right? And you're like, what is this? You take a picture of it. Maybe I just had an app and I was curious. It's like, oh, this is the brand blank. And then this is their webpage. And this is the sort of thing. So it does already have that built in as well, which is really cool. We've talked about this. It can detect faces. It can detect and analyze faces in an image. And it can do the age. And it does create a bounding box. So like a rectangle for that. Again, if you wanted to really focus, let's say your entire service was on facial recognition. So I want to do a security thing and it's all about facial recognition. You would actually use, there's a tool called Face Service, which we'll talk about. That's more in depth and has more capabilities. This is just a generic version of, if I just wanted to detect that a human or a face is in my image, I can use computer vision. If we wanted to go farther than that, you would use the Face Service, but we'll get to that in a bit. Cool. It can also detect, so we can also categorize images. So based on the contents, so we have, so we can analyze an image, detect objects, and compare them to the existing categories and determine the best way to sort of provide categorization. So if I have a new image, how do I want to put that? Do I want to put this in like, you know, my happy stock folder or like sad stock folder? Let's say I just had a bunch of images that people could use how they're feeling or something like that. I can sort of categorize that, or just have a category of like, I just want people. Let's say I'm a marketing firm and I see, you know, stock photos of people. Maybe this is just people or that sort of thing. And again, it can do celebrities and landmarks, which is really cool, honestly. Like you can, I would have really loved to use this in 2013 when I went to Spain. So I can look at this. And if you've never been to, you know, France and you sit and say, what is this weird looking building? You can take a picture and it will tell you this is the Eiffel Tower. So, or let's say you had an application. And again, it can do optical character recognition. So if you are just submitting just for a normal, you just want to see what this word is or something like that, you can use OCR for that. If you do want to go more for like text analysis, then like a handwritten letter, there is a tool for that to go a little bit more in depth. If I wanted to do I want to submit an image, there's a couple words, nothing really crazy. I would use the OCR API. When I just looked at computer vision, you saw a section that was OCR. That's really just if you wanted to process an image and take out a few words from there, it will do that. It'll allow for that, which is really cool. Now, if you wanted to do a lot of text, let's say you wanted to really take in a lot of text, maybe from a PDF or the newspaper or something like that. Microsoft has something called the Read API, and that's better for scanned documents that have a lot of text. So it can determine the proper recognition model, so which one to use. So the lines of text and supporting images within that. So the Read API is better if you're taking pictures of, you know, multiple, let's say you were trying to share your notes with a friend. Instead of scanning every single one of you, just took a bunch of pictures and sent it and ran it through, it would be able to use the Read API to then just make a Word document from that. It's really fascinating. Cool. Yeah, so that's the Read API. It's a little bit more information on that. So additional capabilities just from the generic computer vision, it can detect image color schemes. So identifying the dominant foreground, background, and overall colors of an image, which is fascinating. It can identify clip art images or line drawings, which is sort of fun. Like if you take a picture and you want to categorize maybe a painting, it can do that as well. It can generate thumbnails and it can moderate content, again, making sure that maybe your video or photo is not explicit or has any gory scenes or depicts any violence, right? So Facebook or Twitter might use something like this to make sure that people aren't posting things that are inappropriate or against their sort of conditions for their customers. again, when we talk about custom vision, you do have to train it. This is on really just if you wanted something that's not like celebrities, again, you wanted to create an application for your friends, you have to train it on a ton of things. As always, you could do the bundle of the cognitive services, but if you just wanted to create an application for fun with your friends, you could do just custom version. You don't, or custom vision, sorry. You don't need all the cognitive services. You just can do custom vision sort of a la carte. It does, again, take a lot for you to be able to really create a really accurate model. And for this, you would create a unique ID for the custom vision project you create. You create a model name. So the name you assign to the model during publishing, the prediction endpoint, and then the prediction key. So there's quite a bit more things that you would need. So an authentication key, the HTTP address for the endpoints. So those are just some of the things that you would need. And you would need to upload your images to your training source and label them with the appropriate class labels. So then, you would have your images and you would have to go in and label, this is Jerry, this is Fred, this is, whoever, and different angles of those photos and of those people that you want to train your friends. So that way you can train and evaluate. And then you would give it, again, a test train split to where then you would save some images and run it through your model and see if it properly detects which friend is which, et cetera, et cetera. So again, you would need to do it from different angles, and you would have to have sufficient images, right? So like 1 or 2 is not going to work. You would need quite a bit of images. And the more images you have and the more angles is the more accurate it's going to be. Again, computer vision does have an aspect of face. And so there's quite a few cognitive services that you can do to detect faces. So computer vision, like we talked about, will genuinely just detect if there's a face there or not. You've got the video indexer, which can use to detect and identify faces in a video, right? So if we just were taking a video and, you wanted to detect a face, remember it talked about it can identify and predict age. So maybe you wanted to have a video and you want to make sure no kids were in that, right? Or nobody under the age of 12, something like that. You could run it through the video indexer and make sure, hey, is there anybody under the age of 12? And if there is, what is the portion that has that, identify that, and then, maybe cut that scene or something like that. Then it also has face, which offers pre-built algorithms that can detect, recognize, and analyze faces. Face, which again is the real more focused if you are dealing with some sort of like security or using your face for more than just, is there a face or not? It can do facial detection, facial verification. So opening my phone with a facial verification. It can find similar faces, which this is an interesting idea of, similar faces. What does that mean? And that's a sort of a gray line. It can group faces based on similarities, and then it can identify people, right? And so really the main things you would do with this would be like facial detection and verification. Again, like it's built in my phone to where if I show it, it opens with my face, or if I want to charge something, it'll charge, right? It'll make my verification is going to my face. One thing that is really prominent in the industry right now is a lot of these larger companies are moving towards facial recognition versus 2-factor authentication. The reason is because hackers are smart and are figuring out how to hack phone numbers. And if they get your phone number and it can somehow convince T-Mobile or Verizon to basically switch over that number to a SIM card, then whenever they go to, text you, 2-factor authentication, they go to text you and say, is this, or send me this code so I can change my password because I forgot my password. If they have your phone number, the code goes to them, right? It goes to their SIM, and then they can hack your stuff. And so a lot of these companies are actually, like Apple and Microsoft are 2 of the big ones that are and Android, which is Google, right? Are really going towards this facial recognition for everything, because it's really, really challenging to, you can just port over a SIM and it's no big deal, but to make a mold of somebody's face is like not worth it, right? And so facial recognition is just going to continue to be a thing that is wildly important.
What about a fingerprint? Is that also going to be?
I don't know why they've moved from face to fingerprint. I'm not quite sure, because it was fingerprint and now everything's facial. I'm not sure why. I don't know, if face is more trustworthy. I'm not quite sure, but I know that everybody is moving towards face. So it's kind of fascinating. Let's say you want to hop on the train and you want to create a really cool tool that you can use that. Again, you can use cognitive services. It's sort of your a la mode. It's everything. And then if you want to just the tool of face, it's kind of a funny name in my opinion, just face. If you wanted just to use that, you could just pay for that as well. And it's very simple. You just need a key, which says this is the user. And then an HTTP endpoint. Where do you take this? Where do you send this to? And the last one would be form recognizer. So use this service to extract information. Again, we talked about this when we were talking about like a pre-built receipt model. If I, let's say I'm in sales and I am going out and, taking people out to dinner and I'm going to get reimbursed for that. Or I just, then I need to keep track. I have a company card, but they want to keep track of what I'm spending money on. They do have a pre-built receipt model that if you were creating that for your company and for a company, it's already pre-built. It already does that. It gets you the date. It gets you, it gets you everything you need out of the box to figure out like, what did you buy? What categories, or is it like, who's your server, the date, where's the location of the, where'd you go eat at? You can do custom models. So it'll allow you to extract key value pairs of data. If you wanted like your own certain things that you can do, like if I was a company that just wanted to detect like maybe alcohol and how much money are my salespeople spending on alcohol versus food. One of my good friends was a salesperson, and his old rule at his company was you can never spend more money on alcohol than you could food. And so what they would all do is just buy appetizers for literally everybody if they want, or just buy another appetizer. So that way they always technically had more food than alcohol, right? But let's say I wanted to create and say, that's a terrible use of our money. What if we cut back and like, only a percentage of this could be alcohol or XYZ, right? So that way they're not buying the top shelf Pappy Van Winkle or, King Louis shots for $50, but then buying a $75 dinner when it's sort of a waste of money. So I can create that if I wanted. And again, as always, you can do that in cognitive services or the form recognizer resource. This is sort of what it would look like, right? This is the pre-built out of the box. It'll get you the time of transaction, date, the merchant info, how much was paid in taxes, receipt totals, and other pertinent information that you might need. And then all the text is returned as well. So who the sales associate was, what did you buy, et cetera, et cetera. This is all out of the box, which is sort of cool. These are the different types of images you can submit. So if your user wants to submit a PDF or JPEG or PNG, it could do all of that. This is the size. File size must be less than 50 megabytes and an image size must be 50 by 50 pixels, between 50 by 50 and 10,000 by 10,000. And a PDF document can't be any larger than 17 inches. What's really cool about this is there is a free tier plan for this. So let's say it was just you and you wanted to categorize maybe what you're spending money on. You just want to create your own thing. That way you can sort of get some information. You always get a receipt. You always upload it. There's a free tier that you can, use right now. Sort of kind of what I'm doing is just using this tool and seeing, what happens and sort of playing with it. So there's a free tier for that. Any questions on computer vision? That was a lot on computer vision. Any questions on that? Cool. Well, I think what we'll do.
Wait, I'm sorry. So
Yeah,
is
go
the
ahead.
form recognizer is only for receipt?
Yeah. So form
Okay.
recognizer is a big thing for receipts. You can also do it for, yeah. Sorry. Form recognizer is for receipts. Cool. So we're going to talk about natural language processing for just a bit. And then from there, we will take a little break. We will finish up with conversational AI, and then we will do a knowledge check and we will be done. So I'm going to share my sound, and there's a cool video. This is the most hype section, in my opinion. I think this is the coolest thing that Microsoft provides. That's the tool that I'm currently using. So here's what NLP is, and we'll talk about that here in just a second.
So think about this. How often do you lie when the dawn of a new medium comes out? So think about this. How often are you alive when the dawn of a new medium comes out? I knew that I had to be a part of VR because there are no rules for what VR should be. Starship Commander is a choose-your-own-adventure VR narrative that uses natural language processing, so you can actually have a real conversation with the characters.
I'm Sergeant Sarah Pearson. I've been assigned to your wing today.
When we started making Starship Commander, we had to figure out, how do we get technology that can understand what a person's saying so that we can have these new narrative experiences? We're a science fiction game. We come up with new words. No off-the-shelf software could let us put in custom words.
Who are the Echnians?
In our story, the bad guys are called the Echnians. And every time we said Echnian, it would come up with really weird words that were similar to other things that you would say. And so it would get confused all the time. So we needed to make sure that we could supply our own script. We started using Microsoft Cognitive Services to power the back end of Starship Commander.
Looks cool.
Once we plugged custom speech service into Starship Commander, I had tears in my eyes when I was playing it because it's like, oh my God, this is it. This is the experience we want.
Open the hatch.
Voice print accepted. Welcome, Commander.
You can essentially put your script in there and it knows, oh, these are the ways that people are gonna talk. And these are the phrases that they're gonna say.
Cool. What's my mission?
It must be something pretty important.
And then the second thing too was the intent detection. With Lewis, you basically give it a couple statements. After you've given it a couple statements, you crunch it and you start typing in your own statements, and it's shockingly scary how good it picks up even stuff that you didn't put in there.
Computer, use autopilot and let's be on our way.
Autopilot engaging.
I've never seen an opportunity like this, where there's a wide open playing field, no one's written the rules yet, there's gonna be tons of amazing software out there, and I just can't wait to see what other people write.
Okay. So I don't know if that hyped you up, but it is pretty sweet. NLPs are insane, and it's a really cool tool. And especially as you start thinking about, I'm sure you guys have been hearing a lot about the metaverse lately, and it's a huge thing that is sort of becoming more and more popular, and using things like NLP and using things like this AI is going to open up the world, in my opinion. So we're not going to go into groups, but can anybody think of maybe possible times in our everyday life that we experience and encounter natural language processing? Any ideas? We talked a little bit about it earlier.
Siri.
Yeah, like Siri, right? That's a great one. What else is another one? Siri, Google,
Alexa.
Yeah, Alexa. If I want to do a text message, yeah, Alexa Cortana. Like if I want to do a text message, I can say, you know, hey Siri, do this, and it understands what I'm asking it to do. Natural language processing is a lot of places, right? And yeah, you have some hubs like Alexa and Google and
Google Translate.
Google Translate we'll get to in just a second, but
okay.
Sort of same sort of thing, right? But really it allows us to use language to interact, and it does allow us, you know, to say something, and then it interprets and processes what we're trying to communicate, what we want to communicate, and then allows us to do something for that. So there's a couple different things.
What about like autocomplete?
I'm sorry?
Is autocomplete part of NLP?
Yeah, that's a great one. That's a great one. So if you guys have ever been on Google, right, or Gmail or somewhere, and you're trying to type something and it's predicting what you're going to say next, and it just saves some time, that is an incredible example to where, yeah, I can understand what you're trying to do and maybe suggest something else. Automated phone assistants, those are actually going to be part of what we talk about next with our bots sort of thing, conversational AI. But they sort of use some different things as well. So when we're talking about NLP and natural language processing, Azure has a couple different things. First one, it's got text analytics, translator text, speech, and then Lewis, which is language understanding intelligence service. That's what they were talking about in the video. And we're going to go through sort of all of these right now. Text analytics, we can use this service to analyze text documents and extract key phrases, detect entities such as places, dates, and people, and evaluate sentiment. So how positive or negative a document is. So what I can do is I can have some sort of document and that I write or I submit, right? And it's easy because for the most part, humans are able to read some text and understand the meaning behind it, right? If I'm reading and there's a joke or somebody's sarcastic, I can understand and pick up, oh, this is sarcasm. Even if, you know, I don't have to consider grammar rules. I don't have to do that. I just sort of understand. But that's a very, very difficult thing for computers, right? But what Azure has been trained and is able to do is it can determine the language of a document. So that's huge, right? It can determine if this is French or English or Spanish. It can perform sentiment analysis on text to determine a positive or negative sentiment. I don't know if you guys write a lot of emails. I do for working for Coding Dojo. And on my Google, we use Gmail. And when I write an email, there will be a little emoji at the bottom to identify what the sentiment of my message is coming across of. I use Grammarly as well. And it says like, hey, this message is coming off very stern, right? Or this is coming off kind or warm or welcoming. It's reading what I'm writing and it's using NLP, it's using text analytics to determine the sentiment of what I'm saying, right? It reads the text and says, oh, he's coming off as kind or warm or welcoming, or he's coming off very angry or rude. It can also extract key phrases. You might think of like Cliff Notes back in the day. If you didn't want to read an entire book, you just went on Cliff Notes and figured out what, you know, so you could have conversation about each chapter. But it can extract key phrases from text. Lance asks, it's reading your context. Yeah, it's reading what are you communicating? And then it's saying the way you communicated that you need this thing by Friday, you communicated it in a kind way, or you used words or sentence structure that came off sort of rude and angry. Yeah, so it's incredible what it can do.
What about checking, like, you know, when an email comes in, is it a spam or if it goes to inbox?
That would probably be more, I mean,
like
yeah,
spam,
it's using
spam filters.
Yeah, it's using a tool, right, to detect, is this a known address and sort of some of those certain things. So yeah, or is this an address that we know causes just like a phishing scam, something like that. But text analytics specifically takes in words. So not necessarily the contents of your message, but it takes in words and it can identify and categorize entities in the text. So, oh, this is mentioning people. Did you want to, you know, there's another one where sometimes when I do Google and I'll say, you know, please see attachment, and I forget to do that. And before I send it, Google will say, you had mentioned an attachment. Do you want to add that? It's reading and understanding the text that I'm saying and saying, oh, you said that, you know, please see attachment, but as you press send, you didn't attach an attachment. Would you like to go ahead and do that? So we can understand those certain things, also dates, times, and quantities, which is insane. So if I were to look at this here, text analytics. So what I want to do now is we're going to split into some groups. There's 11. Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to split into 4 groups. So this will be anywhere from 2 to 3. So we're going to split into 4 groups. And then if you're group 1, I'll just do this. You're going to be in charge of language detection. So the different part of text analytics, put this in the chat. Language detection, and I'll name it in the breakout room. I'll name what you are. Sentiment analysis, key phrase extraction, and then entity recognition. And so we're going to use this reading right here to read through these and understand what they are. And then what we'll do is we'll give it 20 minutes, and then group 1 will teach us about language detection. So you can create some sort of document or slide. You don't have to, you know, just have somebody be prepared to present. So I would write some stuff down, but you want to understand, here's some of the questions. What does a language detection capability of text analytics software do? What does it return? What's an example of this? What does a score of non mean? So these are the questions you're going to try to answer. We're going to give you 15. We're going to give you, let's do 15. It says 10. I'm going to give you 15 minutes to do this. And then we'll come back together as a class, and then each group will explain the different type of text analytics. Any questions? Again, you're going to have to make a copy. Oh, you're not going to write on this, so you don't have to make a copy. You just create your own Google Doc for your class. Any questions? Okay, I'm just going to do perfect. Okay. Okay, all the rooms are open, and I'll change the names. Cool. So thanks for doing that. Can group one sort of teach us these 4 things and teach us what you learned about language detection?
I could talk about it if you want.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, so for the first question, it says like, what does the language detection capability of the text analytics software do?
Mhm.
I feel like it's pretty obvious it does like language detection, but beyond that, it's like it just gives you not only like it goes into this later in the what does it return, but it gives you not only the language, but it gives you also like how confident it is that it is the language that you're looking for. I mean that it found.
Yeah.
And then like in what it does it return, it gives you the name of the language, like I think they said like ISO code. I don't know what the ISO part and all that stands for, but that's the first time I've heard of that. But it's just like EN and things like that.
Yeah, it's just what it detects, that's sort of like a keyword. So sort of like an ASCII, right?
Yeah.
Or in binary, how a letter is associated, sort of thing.
And then, like I mentioned before, the last thing it returns is a score based off of how confident it is that the language that it determined is actually the language that it is.
Okay.
For examples of this, the first thing that came to my head was how like on a browser like Chrome or certain other browsers, they'll have, oh, okay, I see it in the chat. But how like in Chrome or other browsers, like you go to a website, if it's like a website in like a different language, like if like a website's all in Spanish, for instance, and you're a primarily English user for the browser, then it'll be like, hey, this website's in Spanish. Would you like me to translate this for you?
Yeah.
And you can say yes, and it'll automatically change all the stuff over to Spanish. I mean, all over to English.
Yeah, when it gives a score of NaN, what does that indicate? What does that indicate?
Yeah, the example that they gave was like how an emoji, it's all like special characters and everything. It says NaN. I imagine it would probably do the same for numbers, even though that seems kind of contradictory to NaN.
Yeah.
And then
I believe NaN is more of a, if it doesn't understand what language, right? So it only has, I think it's like 60 languages or something like that, but there's over 3,000, right?
Yeah.
So what it's NAN is saying, I don't know. It's a results in an unknown language. And then the number, like you said, that positivity, right? Like how positive and how confident I am, what score is that? If it is unknown for the language name, it gives a number instead of a, a 0.1, it just gives an NAN saying I have zero idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good job.
All right.
Thanks for that, Tyler. Do you have anything else to add to that?
No, I think that's
Cool.
mostly it.
Yeah. Group 2, whoever was in group 2, can you tell me and teach me a little bit about sentiment analysis?
Yep. Sure
Perfect.
thing. So it's basically a pre-built machine learning classification model. And what it does is that it analyzes, it has the capability to do text analytics and evaluates the text to return sentiment scores and labels for each sentence. It's useful for detecting positive or used primarily for detecting positive and negative sentiment.
Sure.
For the second question, what values the service will return? It returns sentiment scores represented as a value of either minimum of 0, maximum of 1. The closer to 0 being more negative, the closer to 1 being more positive. And if it lies somewhere in the middle, like around 0.5, that basically indicates either that there was not enough context to detect the sentiment, or that the tone or the sentiment is neutral. Finally, an example of that is like doing sentiment analysis for social media reviews, for feedback responses, product reviews, and things like that. And finally, perhaps even using it for regulation of forums in case someone posts something against rules and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Great job. I think sentiment analysis is something that is more widely used than we really genuinely think about, right? Where we can have, if a brand goes live, Halo just dropped today, right? And so on Twitter, it might use sentiment analysis to say, what are people saying about Halo? Is the feedback generally, it's not somebody reading and saying, oh, this is good, this is bad, right? They can run this through and say, it's, predominantly like 78% of people are having a positive response or positive impression of Halo. Or same thing like we were talking about with emails, right? I can run through it. It can understand my sentiment and then create a score and let me know, hey, you're coming off quite, rude, if we're being honest.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, right? It's a cool tool. Yeah, great job. Yeah, sentiment analysis is cool. Cool. Free key phrase extraction, group 3. Anybody want to teach me anything on that?
Yeah, I can do that one.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So what I got was it's key phrase extraction is like the concept of evaluating the text of a document and then taking the main points of that document. The example the article is kind of giving was like a restaurant review. There was all positive. They're like, oh, friendly service and fantastic experience. Table was great, blah, blah, blah. And so it would go through the text and it'd be like, all right, friendly service, fantastic service, table. And so it would just take those keywords out of the whole thing. And I guess I see this being useful as like, first of all, you don't have to read the whole thing. You could just read those key phrases to get a general feel of what's happening. But then also kind of provides you that feedback of like, how is this thing working out?
Yeah. Yeah. Key phrase extraction is something that can be useful. I mean, obviously all of this stuff can be useful. That's why it's built and that's why it's a tool, but yeah, it can be, if I'm wanting to read a news article, but I only want the summary, right? Or I only want sort of the key points, I can just use key phrase extraction to give me the synopsis of what's going on. I don't have to, read all the filler words or, XYZ. Or like you said, if I want, what do people feel about my restaurant, right? I can get out the key phrases of what this is of a review and say, here's some common things that people have said. If I'm on Yelp and I want a bar with that great outdoor seating, maybe I use key phrase, extraction during reviews in any place that has like great seating, cool bar, right? Then my users, when they search, that then populates and says, okay, this place is here's what users are saying about this place. Yelp, I think, genuinely has this feature where it says, users check out this bar, users say great bar, great experience, right? So it's just taking that keyword that I'm using, going through reviews and saying, oh, here are the keywords associated there. So it's a really cool one. Good job. And the last one is our entity recognition, group 4. Anybody want to take that for me?
Yeah, I can do that.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, so entity recognition, pretty much, it's almost like a filter. You put any text that you want into the language service, and what it'll give to you is a list of entities. And basically what an entity is just like a like a category. It'll put different parts of whatever you gave it into different categories. So for example, like the example it has here is I ate at the restaurant in Seattle last week. It'll return to you Seattle, and it'll say, hey, that's a location. And the cool thing it'll do is actually, if it's really recognizable, it'll give you like a Wikipedia link to whatever that is. So it'll send you the Wikipedia link for Seattle. And then it'll also give you last week and say that that's a date/time, and the subtype is date range. So yeah, pretty simple, really cool stuff.
Yeah, that is really cool. I mean, you can have, what is the weather in Seattle sort of thing, right? And it allows us to identify the city we're trying to go, and then maybe translate and show us a page for that. So by doing that, having this entity recognition, I can, identify and more so strengthen my search and what I'm actually looking for. So way to go, guys. Good job. Cool. Anything else to add on before we jump into the next thing? Cool. So now we're going to talk about Azure NLP services. So this is just the service used to translate text between more than 60 languages. And so this is, you sort of think of Google Translate, right? My friend that Nikhil, that you were talking about Google Translate back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day, we would, if I had Spanish class, I might go put everything through Google Translate, but it couldn't understand, right? In Spanish, the way you describe something, the where you put the adjective is different, right? And so it didn't know that. It would just do a strict translation of each word. So if it was, it would translate red, it would translate ball, but it wouldn't put it in the right sentence structure. And so what now Azure has done, because we've got all of these languages and we've trained these models over and over and over and over and over again on, sentence structure, on cultural expressions, cultural things to say. Now over 60 languages, I can take my word, maybe in English, and my sentence in English, and it'll actually translate it into Spanish in the correct grammar, right? In the correct way. That's not just doing a literal translation of each single word, which is really, really cool. It's a challenging feat because AI systems must understand not only to use the word, but also the semantic context in which they're used and what is okay to say and how you would say something, right? And if you say something one way, then it's, offensive. And if you say something else, it's totally fine. So it has to understand those phrases, those slang phrases, and the grammar rules versus just like what is formal versus informal and colloquialisms, and all of that need to be considered when we're translating anything from even, French to English. We have to understand those different contexts. And by using this, we can use the speech service. So speech service is going to enable speech to text and speech to speech translation. And so speech service is what I was actually using, right? I was speaking for my app, my little app. I'm speaking into something and then it's translating text and it's converting it to text, and then it can do that. Or I can just do translator text. Let's say I already have text and I want to use text to text translation. I can use the translator text service for that as well. Now, there is some optional configuration if you want to fine tune some of the results. Like let's say I am cussing in English and I am going to a spot that, using profane language is not okay. Right. Or something I say might be super profane somewhere else, but it's normal here. I can do a profanity filtering, right? That filters out any sort of profanity. So if it's translating, it's not going to translate into those profane words if I want. And then I can also do selective translation. So I can tag content so that it isn't translated. So like a brand name, right? So let's say I'm writing an article in English and I'm writing on the new Apple MacBook Pro M1, right? M1 Pro. Well, I don't want, if I'm translating it to French, I don't want the French word for Apple because Apple's a brand, right? It is. And MacBook One, a MacBook Pro is its own entity, right? It doesn't need to be translated. That is it. And so what I can do is I can say, oh, okay, these words I don't want you to translate. I don't want you to translate Apple or this brand name or this word or phrase or this item number. I don't, or item description. I don't need that. It needs to stay in English. So I can do that as well, which is sort of cool, right? I can sort of filter and make sure that it translates what I want it to translate. It filters out any sort of profanity. So if I'm saying something super offensive, somebody, I can set it up to where if somebody were to come onto my channel, let's say I'm a podcast and then I have, right, like it's or YouTube channel and I go live and it's going to have context where people can do translations. If I want to set it up to where even if my guest says something super offensive, to a people group, I can set it up to where like, even if they say that, it's not going to translate that way, which is a cool sort of thing within the translator text and speech as well. Speaking of speech, we can use this service to recognize and synthesize speech and translate that into spoken languages, which is kind of wild, right? I can take speech, it can recognize and interpret the words that I'm saying. It can then synthesize that and it can speak out loud. And what's really cool about this and where I think we are really sort of going with this is, right now language, I pressed the wrong button. Language barrier is a huge thing, right? Sorry, I got a million of these. Just a couple more. Here we go. There we go. Sorry about that. Right now, having a language barrier is a huge issue, right? But Amazon came out with these headphones. I think we're a little bit ahead of their time, but it actually had immediate processing. So let's say I spoke French and my wife spoke English, right? Well, I could learn English and she could learn French, right? That's probably the end goal. But immediately, if we were just coworkers and we wanted to communicate, there's actually, a process where I can speak something. The AI takes what I say and it actually it takes what I'm saying in French and it actually converts it to English and then says it to, my coworker, my wife or something like that. And then she responds in English, it converts it to French, and then I hear it in French, which is this really interesting thing. So we actually don't need to learn multiple languages. AI is just going to do it for you, right? I don't know if you guys are Doctor Who fans. It's my favorite show. I love Doctor Who. But there's this whole idea that his spaceship translates everything on any language out there, translates it to English, right? Because it's an English speaking show. It's like, how do we understand? And it translates automatically. And what they're saying, what they're saying goes into this alien language, and what the aliens are saying comes in as English. Same sort of things happening, right? And we're able to do that using this tool that's already built with 60 languages, which that is huge, right? 60 languages, but there's 3,000 out there. And so one thing that we have to recognize is that although this is, what a feat that we have for 60 languages, imagine if you're one of the languages that isn't represented, right? And that sort of, some of this gap in inclusiveness and fairness that we have to be aware of as we are building these tools. How do we include people? What if you speak something that isn't, desirable from a business perspective, or, there's not a lot of business, or you're, typically the countries and the villages that aren't prosperous are going to be the ones who sort of are left behind. So how do we take those languages and do that? But right now, for what we have, this is a really cool tool that we can take this and actually convert it into something else, which is super sweet. There's a couple things we can do that for both speech recognition and for speech synthesis. Oh, sorry. And speech synthesis, we can use the speech to text API or the text to speech API. They do as they say. It converts text into speech, right? To where it then is saying something, or speech into text, where I can say something and then it will convert it into, closed captions for another language of their choice, sort of thing. As always, you can use cognitive services as like the sort of bundle version, but if you just wanted the speech resources, so the one that I was using was just speech, I didn't need cognitive services. I would just use the speech resource, and then it sort of is the a la carte. You're only paying for what you need. You're not paying for a massive, cognitive service or cognitive resource sort of thing. And the last one would be Luis. So this is language understanding intelligence service. So this is a way that I can train a language model and it can understand spoken and text-based commands. That's what they were using in their video game. Again, they say it as Luis. And in order to work with language understanding or Luis, you need to take into account 3 core concepts: utterances, entities, and intents. An utterance is an example of something a user might say, right? Which your application must interpret. So for example, when we're using home automation systems, a user might say, switch the fan on or turn on the light, right? Those are 2 phrases that might come out. Those phrases in themselves are called an utterance. When we're dealing with these phrases, the entity is the item in which the utterance is referring to. So for example, switch the fan on, the item that I am, the user of that phrase is identifying or targeting is the fan, right? That's what we want it to do. We want our fan to turn on, or I want to turn on the light. That's the thing that I am seeking. That is my entity. What I'm wanting to do to that, before that, there are 4 types of entities. There's machine learned, so entities that are learned by your model during training from context and sample utterances you provide. List, so I can provide a list of defined as hierarchies and sublists. So for example, sublist might be like for light or fan, might include sublists for light or fan. So for each list entry, you can do like synonyms for like lamp for light, those sort of things, right? Like instead of like remote control, my wife calls it the clicker, right? I hate that. I don't know why, but like I call it the remote, she calls it the clicker. Those are the same things. They're just synonyms for the same thing. So if I'm saying, like Alexa, where's the clicker or where's the remote? It's understanding the entity I'm trying to find is where that remote is. You can do regex. So that's regular expression. If you guys did the web applications, you understand what this is. It's basically a pattern we can define. So it could be like telephone numbers, right? And then we could do pattern any. So if we wanted to define patterns for complex entities that might be hard to extract from sample utterances, and we can go ahead and do that as well. Then the last thing, we have our utterances, which is our whole phrase. The entity is what we're trying to target. And then our intent is what are we trying to do to that target? So in this case, switch the fan on, right? I'm wanting to turn on the fan, or turn on the light. I'm wanting to turn on the light. That's what I'm wanting to do to the light. That is what I intend to do to my entity. I want to turn it on or turn it off, et cetera, et cetera. When we're doing this, this is how it would sort of be built up. You could create these things like greetings, right? Where a related utterance would be, hello, hi, good morning. I could have a list of these in a sub list if I wanted. I would also have maybe turn on. So switch the fan on, turn the light on, where the entities are a specific fan or a specific light, right? Like if I'm having a home automation with Alexa, something like that. If I wanted to check the weather, what's the weather in Seattle tomorrow? Just like, I can't remember who was explaining it, but my entity would be Seattle and then the date, which is tomorrow, right? This is the date time format. And so I can have this utterance. I want to know what the weather is, and the entity I want to know about is Seattle, and when do I want to know about it is tomorrow, that thing. Or you can have fun ones to where there's related utterance of like, tell me a joke, right? And then so, what you do is Alexa, now is this a joke? What's the meaning of life? And Alexa will be like, there is none, whatever, right? Like there's some funny things with that companies are starting to build. And if I wanted to use this language understanding, I can use a dedicated resource just called language understanding, which again, it just focuses on this and just this tool, nothing more, nothing less. Or as always, I could do the bundle, which is just cognitive services. Now, obviously, I didn't say this, but cognitive services is more expensive because it's a bundle, right? You have access to more things. But a la carte, this language understanding is this idea that I can actually pay less and I don't need all this other junk. I just need this one portion of NLPs for Azure. Any questions on NLP stuff? We went a little bit longer than I had hoped on NLPs.
Yeah, so just a quick question, like the driverless car like Tesla, like, can we talk to Tesla and things like that? I like using, is that NLP used?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Like I, in my car, I don't have a Tesla. I have a Toyota RAV4, but I can say, you know, if I plug in Apple CarPlay, I can say, hey Siri, play this music, or hey Siri, call, you know, mom. And then it will take in through the speakers of my car, take in, process what I'm trying to do with the entity I'm trying to target, which is mom, right? What is my intent? I want to call her, and then it will do that process and then call my mom through that phone. So yeah, you can absolutely do that.
okay. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have Tesla either. I'm just saying.
No, yeah. So like Tesla, you can do the same thing though, right? Like
Oh,
I'm
okay.
assuming you can, I don't know, but it's even, you know, even things of, you know, turn down the air by 2. Like I have a Dyson fan, and I can, you know, say, hey Siri, turn the Dyson down by 2, and then it will identify what I'm trying to target, which is my Dyson, which is connected, right? What do I want to do? I want to turn it down. I give an increment, so it says, okay, I want to turn it down by 2. That's the intent. What am I trying to turn down? My fan. So then it communicates with the fan, turns it down. So that's this whole process of NLPs, which is crazy. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Any other questions, friends? Great questions. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to take a 10-minute break. All right, friends, we're going to talk about the last portion of today's workshop, and that is our conversational AI. So what is conversational AI? Well, a lot of companies publish support information and answers to FAQs, or frequently asked questions, that can be processed through a web browser or dedicated app. We can use these systems to offer means to answers of specific questions that are hard to find. So what does that mean? It means that we can actually take these FAQs and create a bot that, through a phone or email or texting or, you know, a chat box, something like that on social media, that can actually answer all of these, you know, frequently asked questions. And we don't have to have a person being hired answering the same questions over and over and over and over again. And we call this conversational AI. So increasingly, we're seeing organizations turning to this, right? And we sort of talked about this at the beginning, but if I want to go to Xfinity, my internet provider, right, and I want to ask a question, it has a bot. And I want to talk to somebody, and all it asks is this about your bill? Enter 1, 2, 3, or 4, you know, whatever. What's your account number? And you give it your account number. And these bots are just designed to interact with users in a conversational way. As we can see here from our chat interface, right? It says, like, I'm the support bot. I have a question about my bill. Okay, what's your account number? It gives it. And then it's like, I found it. What do you want to do with this, right? And so this is our conversational AI that we can create. This is what we call a chat interface. So you might see this on like a website, but they can be designed sort of across multiple channels, whether it's through email, through social media, voice calls, right? If you call your credit card company or your bank, oftentimes you're going to get this same sort of thing, to where they don't have to employ as many people. So they save money on that end. And it sort of takes out some of those, you know, having to answer the same thing. Here's how I find my bill. Here's where you pay it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a couple things that when we're talking about conversational AI, they take place in the form of messages, typically exchanged in turns, or you saying something and then it going click, 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 as if it's trying to think or type or something, and it gives something back, right? And this is this pattern sort of forms the basis of many user support bots, to where we can often be based on our FAQs, our frequently asked question documentation. And if we want to use those, right, every company typically has like an FAQs to where you can sort of answer your own question. If we want to use that, there's two things we need. We need a knowledge base of question and answer pairs. So usually some sort of built-in NLP model, right? You can sort of think about Luis, where we say, here's the question and here's the intent and what I want you to give back, right? And then we would have some sort of bot service that just provides the interface or the voice to answer those questions that the users might have. And if we're going to use conversational AI, especially in Azure, there's two services we need to use. First one we need is our Q&A maker. So this is our question and our answer. We're typically going to use this, just use our FAQ sheet for this and maybe some additional questions. But it's a cognitive service that enables you to create and publish a knowledge base, right? So typically ask questions, the answer to those questions with built-in natural language processing capabilities. And so somebody can say those words, maybe say a synonym of that, and it can sort of process and align with, this is what I think you're trying to say, or this is what I think you're trying to do. Here's that information. Then you would also utilize the Azure bot service, which is just going to be a framework for developing, publishing, and managing bots on Azure, whether that's through the phone, through your email, through social media, or through a chat service, maybe on like your website. So we're talking about our Q&A maker. There's a couple things that we can use for that resource, right? To create our knowledge base. We can generate it from an existing FAQ document or web page. So most companies, again, if they haven't already used a bot, there's typically at least an FAQ page on there that we can sort of, you don't have to call and ask the company something. You can just look there. We use that to generate our knowledge base, right? So for our bot and for our NLP to use and say, when somebody is asking this, this is what they're trying to get back. We could import predefined chit chat data source. So there are companies out there that have like sort of this generic data source of like, hey, how's your day? It's going good. How was yours? Cool. I need help with my bill. Great. Right. So I can import some of that pre-built or predefined sort of questions and answers. And then lastly is I can enter and edit manually. So let's say that I employ this bot service, then all of a sudden I'm realizing that all of my customers are now calling about something specific that maybe I forgot in my FAQs or I didn't mention. What I can do is I can go into that knowledge base and actually now generate that question and add that as part of my bot service. So now this question that a bunch of people are asking and I didn't really have an answer to, I can go in and I can edit and enter that new phrase, that new frequently asked question and the answer to that. So now my bot is just continuing to grow in the knowledge base that it has in my company. So normally when we're dealing with this, it's sort of a combination of all three. So you don't have to pick just one. You don't have just to pick the FAQs or enter it manually or use a predefined service. You're going to typically do a combination, right? Again, the chit chat service might be just like, hey, how's your day? It's good. How's yours? It's good. Okay, cool. What can I help you with? Right. So you might bring that in. You're definitely going to typically use your FAQ document. That's going to be your main source. And then you might have, again, those additional manual entries for, as your bot continues to grow and as your company grows, maybe a new thing or maybe a new project or a new sell. Like let's say you're e-commerce and you're having a Black Friday sale, right? And there's more information on that. They can get that by creating this manual entry. So questions for the knowledge base can be assigned alternative phrasing to help consolidate questions with the same meaning. So like if I say, what is your head office location? You can anticipate different ways this question is going to be asked by adding alternative phrasing. So instead of what is your head office location is where is your head office located, right? Those are asking the same thing. So I can consolidate those questions in my database and say, hey, here's basically some alternate phrasing for this question that might come. And then when that's the same thing, again, this is the answer we want to give them. It's in Seattle or it's in Kentucky or wherever it is located. So once we create this, once we have this Q&A maker, right, then we use our Azure bot service to provide the framework. So we've created and published our knowledge base, and I can now deliver it through a bot. And again, I can do it in multiple ways. I can do it via the phone. I can do it via email. I can do it via social media. I can do it via a chat service on an application. There's a ton of different things I can use for a bot. Wow, that's really it. Okay. There's tons of different things I can use for a bot in order to communicate with my customers, right? Typically we see it as like a chat service on the internet. But again, I have a couple things where a company might, my dentist says, hey, you have a meeting coming up, or not a meeting, an appointment coming up. Press 1 if you can make it, press 2 if you need to cancel, right? And so it's interacting with me. I press 1 and say, yes, I do that. And then I get an email back and it says, thanks, your appointment is confirmed. Or, oh, okay, sorry, doesn't look like you can make it. Here's the next available time. Which one works best for you? A lot of these services, these texting services are starting to come in handy instead of having to call to get a hair appointment, right? I might just text my hairdresser and they might have a bot service that has a link to my calendar. And so I might say, hey, I need to make an appointment for Tuesday. And they say, okay, Tuesday, only 2 and 4 p.m. are the only available times. Which one would you like? And I say 2 p.m., please. And then it says, okay, great. Please give me your name and or maybe because of my number, it reads and I have an account onto that website. And it says, oh, okay, well, like you are now booked for 2 o'clock. And then on that website, it goes in, takes that information and books and creates an appointment at 2 o'clock for me, the user. And so there's a ton of different things we can do from a conversational standpoint. I think we have these times mixed. I thought this was going to take an hour and the other one was 15 minutes. I was very confused on how we were doing that at 15 minutes. I think it got switched. I think NLPs was supposed to take an hour and this was supposed to take 15 minutes because we are now done with all the material. Are there any questions on conversational AI in Azure?
So this also works with the credit card activation. When you get a new credit card and you call them and you provide the number and then.
Yep.
So that's the bot that's using. Okay.
And then maybe you provide your credit card number and then it says, put the last 4 of your social security number just as a verification. You do that. And then it says, okay, this was verified. Boom, your credit card's turned on, that kind of thing. And now there's not a user having to ask you that information. It's just a computer, which there is some safety pieces in that too, right? Like if I call a place and it's a bot and it's asking me my social security number and my credit card number, there is, like back in the day, my mother a couple times got her credit card stolen because, she called in a place and then gave her credit card number and somebody wrote it down on the side and then went and used it, right? And so that's a thing. They have access to all your information with people. And sometimes people are desperate and they will do something like that. And we have a bot, we actually mitigate that. And now a company doesn't have to fire somebody or do an investigation or, XYZ on who stole this information. It's just in there, the bot has it and then it doesn't record it, just does what it's supposed to. And then it's out. It receives some, 9-digit number, 10-digit number, whatever your social security is. It receives some 10-digit number. It doesn't remember it, right? Doesn't have a memory, doesn't save it. It gives that as a code, accesses database, flips the credit card to on, and then, its job is done. And so it doesn't remember, that information. So it's a little bit more secure in that regard as well. Are there any questions? Any other questions about conversational AI?
Yeah. Did you guys use Azure to make the dojo bots
on Discord?
Yeah.
No, there's a Discord has its own sort of bot service that you can create.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. There's quite a bit of stuff you can do. There's really great, if you're like practicing your coding, some really great tools like make a Discord bot. There's plenty of YouTube videos and it will show you how to do that. Bots are becoming a really, really big thing. There was actually just an outlaw. So I love like sneakers, like new Nike sneakers and Adidas and sort of the hype sneakers. And one of the big issues is that people are using bots, not even for sneakers, but for exclusive drops. So like the new Xbox, the PS5, certain sneaker, certain clothing. And now countries are starting to make it illegal for you to use a bot to buy an exclusive good or service. But it's because these bots, you can sort of just train them to keep refreshing a page. And once this thing says quantity of 1 or, that I can buy it, it clicks the button, it already has the information and then it buys this and it might buy 10 of them, as many as it can. And then people are, going and reselling Xbox or yeah, exactly, Tyler, scalpers to where, it's Christmas time. If I can get an Xbox for $700 and a desperate parent's going to come to me because that's the only thing that their kid asked for. And they're like, money's not an option. I just told them I'd get it. And now I charge them $1,200. I am price gouging. Microsoft never sees any of that money, but I do. Right. And so actually making it illegal. It's really big in the shoe industry right now too. To where, there's Jordans that you might buy for $180 or $200 And like there's a pair of, they're called the Dior Jordans. So it's the company of Dior combined with Nike, and I think they're like $400, but now they go for like $8,000, which is ridiculous. But Nike doesn't see that, Dior doesn't see that, just whoever used that. And if they used a bot, then they bought a, you know, pun intended, they got a bunch of stuff. Maybe they have 12 pairs of that. And now they just made close to $100,000 on a shoe, you know? So it's kind of crazy. Vincent, yeah, government is trying to pass law on bots, right? To where they can't do that. And it's because it's not great for the company. It's not great for, like, it's creating a scarcity. Same big thing with like buying the NVIDIA, I think it's like 3070 CPU and GPU, where GPU, yeah, 3080, that's what it is, because they're using that, they need that for like cryptocurrency and crypto mining, and it's making it to where people can't buy a computer, or you know, people who just want this for their computer for gaming can't do it, because these big companies or these big people that are trying to mine for Bitcoin are just buying them, and they have all this money, and then they just buy all of them, and they either sell them for a super high price, or they just create a scarcity, and then people can't use it. And it's a big thing. So yeah, they are really trying to work on that right now. Yeah, it's the GPU, 3080 GPU. So, but that's not this kind of bot. This is just more of a conversational bot that Azure, this is a good bot. But there are bot, you know, there's a bunch of stuff out there that it can be used. Cool.
Do they use like these bots in the warehouse? Like, you know, Amazon gets so much order in one day. So how do they like manage and send out all these orders and deliver it in Prime Day or something like that? Like,
yeah, I mean, from my understanding, you know, there's different things, right? It's all, I mean, a lot of it is automated, but it will have, like, for the delivery, right, for the groceries services, basically you have like this phone thing, because one of my good friends works for a company that sells things to Amazon, so I like know the process really well in the warehousing perspective. But basically they have these phones, and then it's the system just says what's the most efficient way for you to pick this, and then they have a minimum of, you know, they have a rate to how quick they're picking things, and so how many grocery things that they're making and how quick they're doing that, and to where it's all set up to where, like, okay, yeah, we get, you know, if Amazon gives a 2-hour delivery window for groceries, you know, they say 2 hours, but it's really like, oh, all the 2-hour ones are filled. We can do, the best thing we can do is like six hours from now. And they have users based on of like how many you know, frozen section, or how many XYZ. It has this little process that says this is the most efficient way. Something that I think is really fascinating. This has nothing to do with Azure AI, but in the warehouses of Amazon, you would think, I would thought, because I've seen one, that all the groceries would be like specific to all the cereals are here, all the breads are here, all the chips are here. And some of that stuff is true. The bread and the chips are typically in the same area. Other than that, it's just random cubbies with random things. So you might have like there are chemicals that can't be mixed with food, but you might have like a pasta sauce, baby formula, and some Rice Krispie treats all on the same shelf. And it doesn't matter, because they found that it's actually just as efficient as long as it's put somewhere. It doesn't matter. They can create a most efficient plan. You start at the back and you move your way forward. Doesn't matter where you're at. You don't have to go back and forth, as long as it's just on some random shelf. If it fits, then you're good to go. It's kind of fascinating. Yeah, their warehouse is like a Mongo database. Absolutely.
I was just wondering, because yeah, Amazon has this Prime Days, and you know, in Prime Days people order so much, and like how do they manage all these customer orders and ship it out on the right time and deliver it on? Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah, a lot of them, I mean, a lot of what Amazon does, because they're big enough to do it, is they store a lot of that at their website, at their warehouse. And so it's all like an analytics operational thing, which obviously AI is in there to find the most efficient way. But, you know, they might, instead of doing, I think it's called drop shipping, where a company uses Amazon, and once they get an order, they go and they fulfill it for Amazon that day. they become so large that they can just say, you know what, instead of us drop shipping, I'm just going to buy 4 of this product. And then whenever a user wants it, I can send it. And then, they continue to buy more and more based off of demand. And then they don't, they sort of cut out the middleman. Oops. They cut out the middleman and they cut out the actual creator to where they say, you just send me 4, even though you don't have 4 orders, I'm just going to buy them for you. Actually, give me a cheaper price now because I'm buying a quantity of 20 versus, you occasionally selling 10. I'm just gonna buy 20 for now. And if I move them, I'm gonna buy 20 more, but I'm gonna buy them cheaper. And that's why Amazon prices are cheaper too. So I have some friends who sell stuff on Amazon. It is very lucrative. If you can sell something on Amazon, it is very lucrative. My buddy makes like 50 to 60K a month selling a all natural bug repellent. Don't understand it. He makes a lot of money selling bug repellent on Amazon. I don't get it, but he does. I've seen it. I've worked for it. So Amazon's a big beast, but AI is in that. AI is in everything that you can think of, whether it's from our food, from our computers, from our cars, our phones. AI lives, machine learning models live on the phone to where they don't have to report to the cloud. It's on the models on the software. It's insane. So cool. Well, we have a little bit of an option. It's 3:30 now. We can play this game called Kahoot, which is fun. It's more of just like a quiz, a test that you can do to where basically if you want to do it, you can, I'm going to pause the recording actually. All right. I'm also now re-recording.
What was the code again?
It's on the screen. It is 1227463. I'll put that in chat as well. We should have 9 people here. 1, 8, 1 more. Let's see, I'm going to see who it is. Looks like there it is. Okay, so here's how it's going to work. I'm going to start this. Can you guys hear it?
Yeah, I can hear.
Okay, what are we thinking? Are we thinking Christmas, Halloween?
Christmas, because it's coming, right?
'Tis the season.
Tis the season, huh? Okay, so here's how it's going to work. I'm going to start this. There's going to be some questions. There's quite a few. We'll walk through them. And so what this is it's going to have a question, and then it's going to give you some different options. And so I'm going to read the question. It'll give you some time to read the question. If at some point you're like, hey, dude, please stop reading the question because I can't focus, just let me know and then I won't read the question. But I usually read the question, I read it, and then you can pick which one it is. And so it's going to go all the way back from like linear regression and logistic regression, all that. So there's lots of questions. It's a great summation of what we are dealing with. Okay. So this is our AI-900 Kahoot. So here's a quiz. You're just going to pick the color. You want to create a model to predict ice cream sales based on data that includes sales and weather. Which should you use? Azure Machine Learning, Q&A Maker, or Text Analytics. You want to create a model to predict ice cream sales based on data that includes sales and weather. Which should you use? Think about the beginning portion. This morning, what did we talk about? We just talked about Q&A Maker with conversational AI. We talked about text analytics for NLP. Were we predicting for those, or what were we doing to predict? There we go, out of way. Cool. So it is, as you see, Azure Machine Learning. Great job. All right, first was Doug. Let's see, next. All right, you need to provision a resource that will be used for a new language understanding application. What should you create? So you have a resource using a language understanding application. What should you create? Which one we talked about? There was different types, right? There was the a la carte, and then there was the overall general one. Which one would you use here? Yeah, remember it's language understanding. If we were talking about multiple things, right? Language understanding and speech to text, we might do this cognitive service. Remember, text analytics is we're analyzing a text, right? If somebody sends us some sort of like report or a photo with that or something like that. But if we're doing language understanding application, we want to use the language understanding, the LUIS, right? For that. Cool. We got a new one. All right. You publish your language understanding app. What info does a client app developer need to get predictions from it? Remember, we said that there were two things that it needs: the endpoint and the key for the application's prediction resource, the endpoint and the key for the application's authoring resource, the Azure credentials of the user who published the learning language understanding application. There was a slide that had two things on there. Yeah, way to go. It is the key and the application's prediction resource. You would not want the key for the application's authoring resource because that gives somebody access. Let's say I create this tool that people can use, right? I don't want them to have my information because if they have access to that, then they can charge my account, right? It's just the application's prediction resource there. Good job. Ooh, M13 coming in hot. You have an FAQ document. You need to create a Q&A maker knowledge base with the least possible effort. What should you do? Create an empty knowledge base, manually copy and paste the FAQ entries, import the existing FAQ document into a new knowledge base, import a predefined chit chat data source. And we didn't talk about the importing piece, but if you sort of think about it, right? If you have a question on the exam, you want to do it with the least possible effort. You already have an FAQ document. What would you do here? Yeah, you would want to import the existing FAQ document into a new knowledge base. The idea behind a predefined chit chat data source is that it might have some chit chat stuff, but it's not going to have answers to your specific business, right? You know, when is the sale end, et cetera, et cetera. And we wouldn't want to create an empty knowledge base, manually copy and paste FAQ. We can just import stuff into Azure. We didn't really go over that, but just know that that is a tool we can use. And so when we, and this is just also the reason why we do Kahoot, is to sort of show you some sort of language structure that might be on the exam. When it says these things with the least possible effort, that is a great indicator of, it's a great like indicator of this is where you should lean, right? It's sort of these little words and phrases that if I'm between these two, where I create an empty knowledge base or I import one into a new knowledge base, which one provides the least amount of effort? Me building it from scratch or just importing? Will be importing, right? So it's these little phrases. Azure certifications are really good at adding little phrases that dictate which answer is which. So if you ever are between, like, it might be this one or it might be this one, reread the question and see if there's a little phrase in there that might make me lean towards importing is going to have least effort than creating by brand new. Cool. Ooh, we got a new leader. Okay, so you want to be able to submit questions to a support bot using Teams. Others want to use website. What should you do? Create a knowledge base, create a bot and connect web and team channels. Create a knowledge base, 2 bots. 1 bot connects to Teams, the other to the web. Create 2 knowledge bases, a bot for each. 1 connects to Teams, other connects to the web. Think about the last slide we showed, the very last slide. Yeah, so if we're looking at the very last slide we showed, it was this guy, right? We have our Q&A, we create our bot, and then from that bot, I can send it to the different channels, right? So create a knowledge base, create a bot, and connect the web and Teams channels. I don't need multiple bots. I just need one, and I can put it to different channels. Ooh, Tyler was on fire. All right, let's see. You want to train a model that classifies images of dogs and cats based on your own photographs. What should you use? Azure Bot Service, Custom Vision, Computer Vision. Should be pretty standard. Exactly. Remember those little phrases, your own photographs. Computer vision is based off of generic photographs or Microsoft has trained it on that. If I want to use my own photographs, I'm going to use custom vision, not computer vision. Good job. You want to create a machine learning model to predict the price of a car. This is an example of regression, classification, or clustering. What are we trying to predict? So what type are we trying to predict? Yeah, remember, if we're trying to predict a numeric value, that is regression. If we're trying to predict a categorical value, that is classification. If we don't have anything we're trying to predict, we're just trying to get likeness, that's where we do clustering. Doug with a commanding lead. You want to create a model to group penguins together based on their similarities in proportions. This is an example of grouping penguins together based on their similarities. This is an example of, this one's a little bit of a tricker. Yeah, wow, you guys all got it. Clustering, right? If I'm grouping together, I'm clustering. I'm not putting it in a category, I am grouping it together. Good job, guys. Okay, doke. You want users to be able to ask for the current time in a specified city. For example, what time is it in London? You should define city and entity and get time intent with utterances indicating city intent. Create an intent for each city, each with utterance that asks time in that city. Add the utterance, what time is it in city, and to the none intent. So this is our getting our intents, right? Our utterances are, yeah, way to go. I don't want to do every single city in the entire world. That would take forever. So that's why each city, each with an utterance, that would take a long time. I don't want to add the utterance, what time is it in city, with the none intent, because I have to designate which city do I want. So I want to define the city entity with a get time intent with utterance indicating city intent. It's a little bit of a confusing one, but it's just I want to make a generic one. So no matter what city they ask, I can go and I can get it at that specific time. So some of that one is a little bit more just, you got to break down the logic, right? Does it make sense to do every city in the world? No. You plan to deploy an inference pipeline as a real-time service. What compute target should you create to host it? A compute instance, a compute cluster, or an inference cluster. Two of these were on a slide. I said, we're going to use this one first, and then we want to host it. We're going to use this other one. Which one are we going to use to host it? There was a slide that had two out of three of these. Yeah. Compute instance is what we're going to use to create it. If I want to host it, what compute target should you create to host it? That's my inference cluster. My initial one. So I'm glad that none of you guys did the blue one, because that has nothing to do with it. The compute instance is me training it, right? And then if I want to host it, I'm going to use the inference cluster. That was a tough one. But at least you guys got, those were the two ones on the slide. So way to go there. You plan to use score model to test the trained model with a subset of the data set not used for training. Which module? So you plan to use score model, right? Think of our pipeline that we created to test the trained model with a subset of our data that we split across. Which module are you using? So which of these is going to do that? Which is going to have a training data and a testing data? Which is going to use that and do that? I'm dragging and dropping. Yeah, that was kind of worded weird. But yeah, I'm going to split my data. So I have a training set and a validation set, or testing set. Cool. You review a model's performance and note that it has an AUC of 0.3. What can you conclude about the model? Model explains 30% variance between true and predicted. The model predicts accurately for 70% of cases, or the model performs worse than random guessing. It's 0.3. Yeah. Remember the model, anything, we talked about this a little bit in depth, anything under 0.5, you'd be better off randomly guessing, right? And so if it's 0.3, that is not a great model. That is not a good classification model. Ooh, Mark's coming up. All right. You use Azure Machine Learning Designer to create a training pipeline for a classification model. What must you do before deploying? Create an inference pipeline from the training pipeline. Add an evaluate module to the training pipeline. Clone the training pipeline with a different name. Yeah, so we're going to create an inference pipeline from the training. Remember, we use our compute instance, we train. Then from that, we create our inference cluster, right? Our inference pipeline, create that pipeline from what we just trained. That's why it's this guy. This was a little bit harder one. So this is thinking about what must you do to deploy it. Also, we use the word host. So we've already created a training pipeline. In that training pipeline, part of that is our evaluation, right? So if I have this pipeline, I just deleted it. Part of this entire pipeline is the evaluation part, which makes that one away. And then we don't just clone it with a different name. We add the inference pipeline as well.
Hey, is it okay? I'll be right back.
Yeah, that's fine.
Just give me a moment.
Okay. We'll just wait for just 1 second.
Can you go over that last one just a little bit more? I'm sorry, Ed.
Yeah, absolutely. So if I even come here, I'm going to get out of this. There's hundreds of slides. Okay. So here is my model, right? And that last one, some people put evaluate that, but that is part of my training. This pipeline is not done until I evaluate my model. Then once that is done, so that's that training piece is done, then I add the inference pipeline, right? So I take what I did and I add this inference pipeline. This is what I actually use to deploy my machine learning model. So with that question, the trick is, a lot of people put the evaluate, but it's saying, what do you do after? See if I can go back. I don't know if I can. Let's see if I can do this. What are we on? 13 out of 18. So the question was, what must you do before deploying? Well, we've already, so a lot of people put add and evaluate module to the training pipeline. And it says we create it, you use it to create the pipeline for a classification model. What must you do before deploying? Well, if we've already created the training pipeline, then that would already be included, right? That evaluate model is a piece of our pipeline. And so if we now want to deploy that, the thing we must do is create an inference pipeline. It's the same sort of thing as, what are we talking about? We talk about inference clusters. I think it's way ahead. Where we talk about our compute instances. Oh, right here. So our inference cluster deployment targets for predictive services that use trained models. So whenever we want to actually post it and deploy it or host it, then that's when we're using our inference cluster. In order for us to do that, we create that inference pipeline. Here, this is part of our trained. Once this is done, we've trained our model, then we use the inference pipeline to actually host it onto the cloud.
Okay, I'm back.
Cool.
Have you ever used the machine learning before?
You mean from the Azure side, like actually taking a model and put it onto the cloud?
Yeah.
Just messing around with the sandbox, not like my own machine learning model.
Gotcha.
I haven't built anything yet. That's what I'm sort of trying to build that application to actually use their service and then eventually put that onto, the Zoom marketplace, which would then be hosted in the cloud, sort of thing. Okay. Why is there no sound? No sound. Oh, here we go. Okay. Which configuration property of k-means module should you use to set? Should you set to assign items to one of three clusters? So if I wanted 3 groups, what are my 3 things I'm going to do? I set the number of centroids to 3, set random number seed to 3, or set iterations to 3. Remember, what are the 3 dots that we threw into our data set? Yeah. So centroids, right? The number of centroids is however many groups I've identified I want to put my users or my data set into. Cool. Which module should you use to infer cluster predictions from the model? Score model, assign data to clusters, train clustering models. Which module should you use to infer cluster predictions? We did this at the beginning when we came back from lunch, when we did that pipeline. This was the last piece of that pipeline. The one that I sent you guys to do over lunch. There's that last piece there. Yeah, so we want to assign data to clusters. Remember, for a cluster, so a k-means, we don't have any sort of scoring, right? Because it's an unpredicted. There's nothing to really score because we don't know what is right or what is wrong. We're just trying to put them in groups. And so the last thing, if we were to look at this ML designer, the last piece here is we assign data. This is what we did sort of right at the beginning when we got back, is we assign data to my clusters. Right? So I take in data and then I assign that to my cluster. That's what we did right when we got back. Okay, you want to use computer vision and text analytics. You only want one key and endpoint. What should you use? Computer vision, cognitive services, or custom vision? Yeah, way to go. Remember, cognitive services is our bundle, right? And especially these are the little words where you only want to have one key and endpoint. If you just want one, this is our bundle, right? If you wanted multiple keys and endpoints, then you would have a computer vision and a text analytics, right? And you might do that. A company might actually do that. So let's say that my accounting wants to do text analytics to read documents, or my legal department, but then I am on the tech side and I want to use computer vision. Let's say we have different budgets. I might actually do that to where we don't have just one that the company pays for, because I have a tool that I'm using that, is allocated in my budget, and they have a tool that they're using allocated in their budget, and they don't operate the same. So you might want to have multiple endpoints from like an accounting perspective. But if this is saying we want one key and one endpoint, we want to put it under cognitive services so we can just use that. All right. Halfway there almost. You want to use computer vision to identify the location of individual items in an image. Which should you retrieve? Objects, tags, or categories? Identify the location of individual items in an image. Which should you retrieve? Remember when we talked about the image in the little box? What did it give us back? It's objects, right? Remembering that we had talked about in one of the slides that when we are detecting an object and it showed it like a building, it'll not only give you, it'll put a square, but it'll also give you the points on where that building is located on your image. And so if I want to identify the location of individual items in my image, I want to use this objects piece, because this objects piece is going to give me that square, and that square is going to give me the geographical location, or I say geographical, but I mean like where is it located on my image. Tags is just going to give me what is in my image and what's the confidence. And then categories, same sort of thing, that this might be with people or something, and it's 85% positive. But if I want the location and where something is located, I want to use objects. I don't expect you guys to get all of these right. Obviously, you learned all of this today. So, you guys are doing great. You want to analyze images of locations and identify well-known buildings. What should you do? Retrieve the objects in the image. Retrieve the categories of the image, specifying the celebrities domain. Retrieve the categories for the image, specifying the landmarks domain. Want to know well-known buildings. Yeah. So retrieve the categories from the image, right? Because it's going to give me that. And then I'm going to specify the landmarks domain, meaning tell me, I want to use these 9,000 landmarks around the world, and tell me what it is so I can identify it and give that back to my user. You train an image classification model that gets less than satisfactory evaluation metrics. How might you improve it? We didn't really talk about this, but this is a great one. If you get on the exam and you don't really know what it's doing, using some context clues. You reduce the size of images used to train the model, add a new label for unknown classes, or add more images to the training set. I guess we did kind of talk about this one. Think about custom vision. What do we have to do? Yeah. If we're getting less than satisfactory evaluation metrics, then I might mean that I don't have enough data, or I don't have enough angles. I don't have enough data of my friends or my family. So I'm going to add more images to the training set so it can really understand, you know, cheekbones or, you know, XYZ. If I want to identify which of my dogs, you know, is coming in the house or is roaming around, or who you know, let's say I have a camera, create an application, and I come home and the trash is always, you know, my dog likes to get in the trash. I want to know which dog is it. Maybe I train it to where it can say, you know, give me a detection of Marley got in the trash today, or Charlie got in the trash today, whatever. So I might have to add more images so it can get more accurate. Okay. Which of the following results does an object detection model typically return from an image? A class label and probability score for the image, bounding box of coordinates that indicates the region of the image, a class label, probability, and bounding box for each object in the image. Object detection. Yep, it's going to give you a class label back, a probability, and the bounding box for each object in the image. Great job. Okay. You want to create a machine learning model to predict whether or not a person is diabetic. This is an example of regression, classification, or clustering. What kind of model are you going to use here? Yep. Classification, right? Either they're diabetic or not. They're not going to be a group, right? We know what we're trying to identify for the one person who did put clustering. We know what we're trying to identify. Are they diabetic or not? Meaning that it is supervised, meaning we know what we're trying to predict. And because it is a category, not a number, it's our classification. Okay, you train and deploy an object detection model. You want one resource with the same key and endpoint for training / prediction. What do you use? Cognitive services, custom vision, computer vision. You train and deploy an object detection model. You want one resource with the same key / endpoint for training / prediction. So it's going to be cognitive services. Now, I could see why somebody would put computer vision, but it's going to be our cognitive services because we want it for training and prediction. And so because especially when it says you want one resource with the same key and endpoint, that usually is a good indicator that you're going to use the sort of bundle versus having multiple things, because this training and prediction, you would have different endpoints for each. So that's where the same key and endpoint is going to be your cognitive services. Cool. You plan to use face to detect faces in an image. How does the service indicate the location of the face it detects? A pair of coordinates for each face, indicating the center of the face. 2 pairs of coordinates for each face, indicating the location of the eyes. A set of coordinates for each face, defining the bounding box around the face. Not something we looked at, but something, you know, thinking about how the services typically work. What would you think here? Yeah, so a set of coordinates for each face, defining the bounding box around the face. And some of the images we saw, just, you know, a box around that face, same sort of thing here. Okay, you want to use speech to build an app that reads incoming email messages, message subjects aloud. Which APIs did you use? Speech to text, text to speech, or translate? Think about what it's asking you to do here. Yep, it is text to speech, where we are reading a text and we are saying something out loud. That's the tool that we would use. Is somebody randomly putting the opposite one of what it should be? Because there's always just one every time. I don't know if somebody's trying to prank us. What is the one aspect that may impair facial detection? Smile expression, shutter speed, or extreme angles? Impair facial detection. Yep, it's gonna be extreme angles. Right. If you have facial recognition from here into the side and you have something really high up top, it might be a weird angle, and that might not be as accurate if we have it from an extreme angle. All right. You want to use face to identify named individuals. What must you do? Use a computer vision service. Face cannot perform racial or facial recognition. Use face to retrieve age and emotional state for each person. Create a group containing images that of each named individual and train model. Sort of a confusing question. Identify named individuals. Yeah, I would say that. Create a group containing images of each named individual and train model. If I'm looking at this, this doesn't say, celebrity or famous individuals, which would, to me, would indicate I'm creating my own, which would mean that I have to use custom vision, right? So I'm going to have to train a model on certain images of each named individual. So, which would tell me create a group containing images of each named individual and train model using custom vision, sort of thing. Or we saw that we could do that in phase 2, right? You want to transform the numeric columns so that the values are all similar on a similar scale. What module should you add? I want to select the columns, I want to normalize the data, or I want to clean missing data. Yep, I'm going to normalize the data. Remember, it puts it on a scale from 0 to 1. So that way it's not, doesn't affect my numbers. You plan to use form recognizer, pre-built receipt model. What kind of Azure resource should you create? Computer vision resource, form recognizer, or cognitive services resource? Only form recognizer resource. It's a pre-built receipt model. Form recognizer or cognitive services resource. So that is a little bit of a tricky one, right? Cognitive resources does include form recognizer. So this is technically true. But if I could understand why somebody would put only form recognizer, it doesn't say anything about having one endpoint. So this one's a little bit confusing. You plan to use the form recognizer pre-built receipt model. Which kind of Azure resource? I would probably even say it's that one too. The only thing is you could, in theory, technically use cognitive services resource. I don't know why I put this is, this is the answer. This is from Microsoft itself. Because technically this could do it. But I would think that this would also be sufficient. So if you put this, I'm with you. I would have thought this would be sufficient. I would have gotten the same wrong on the exam. I've done this Kahoot a million times. That's fascinating. I guess only because you can technically use cognitive services resource that technically works. It doesn't say you're trying to limit. If it would have said something like you're trying to do it for most cost efficient way and you're only going to use this, then yes, only the form. But I guess technically because it didn't give that stipulation of, money is a factor, cognitive services technically works because it technically has form recognizer in the pre-built model. So that's kind of weird. That's kind of a dumb question, but here we are. You must take English input from a microphone and generate real-time transcription to Hindi. What should you use? Translator text, speech, or text analytics? This is, I talked about this one. Yep, it's speech. This is what I'm currently doing. This is what I'm building. This is what I showed you guys. Speech will take this and you can translate with that. But because I'm taking input from a microphone, I am doing real-time transcription in Hindi. I'm taking the speech to text. And with the speech to text, I can translate. It has the capabilities of translating. So speech here is the correct one. That's what I'm currently building. That's the tool that I used when I showed you guys that Python code. Using form recognizer on receipts in JPEG format, what is the max file you can submit for the pre-built receipt model? I did hit on this. 2 megabytes, 50 megabytes, or 200 megabytes. I did say this out loud because I knew that this question was on here. See if you guys were paying attention. There you go, 50 megabytes. Yep, that's it. And then it was, I think 50 by 50 and 10,000 by 10,000 is the highest it can go. Hopefully that's not the next question. Oh, nope. You want to extract text from images, then use text analytics. You only want one key and endpoint. What should you use? Computer vision, cognitive services, text analytics. You want to use computer vision and you want to use text analytics, and you want one key endpoint. You want to use both of those and you want one key endpoint. Okay, now I'm convinced that somebody is playing with me. It's cognitive services. I just told you. You want to use computer vision to extract text from images. Then you want to use text analytics to analyze it, do whatever. You only want one key endpoint. It is cognitive services. All right, just a couple more, guys. You plan to use the computer vision service to read text in a large PDF document. Which API should you use? It's going to be the OCR, the read, or the recognize text API. You want to do it in a large PDF document. Which one do you want to do for a large one? It's the read API. Yep. Read API is for the large documentation. If I want to ingest an image, then I'm going to do it, just the name of a building. That's when I'll use the OCR. But the read API is for larger documents, larger PDFs. There's a great slide on all of that we talked about. You publish an image classification model. Which information must you provide to developers who want to use it? Image classification model. Only the project ID, the model name, and the key and endpoint for prediction resource. Model, project ID, iteration number, and key and endpoint for training resource. We talked about this. We had a slide on this. The 4 different things that you needed. Well, I just gave one away. So it's 4 things. Yep. ID, the model name, the key and endpoint for the prediction resource. Ooh, we got 5 left. You want to use text analytics to determine the key talking points in a document. Which feature should you use? Sentiment analysis, key phrase extraction, or entity detection? Paying attention here is key to what you need to do. That was a pun. I hope you guys all got it. There you go. It's key phrase extraction. Key talking points, key phrase extraction. There you go. Easy peasy. All right. You use text analytics to perform sentiment analysis and a score of 0.99 is returned. What does this indicate? The document is positive. The document is neutral. The document is negative. We had somebody explain this really, really well, right? Where there was a baseline of 0.5. So if it's 0.99, then our sentiment is going to be positive, right? That 0.5 is our neutral. Anything below 0.5, it's going towards our negative sentiment. Anything that's going above 0.5 is leaning toward our document as positive. Good job, guys. 3 more, 4 more, 3 more. When might you see a NaN returned for a score in language detection? When the score calculated by the service is outside the range of 0 to 1, and the predominant language of the text is mixed with other languages, or when the language is ambiguous. When a language is ambiguous, remember we talked about if you have an NAN, you don't know what that language is. It can do predominant languages mixed with other ones. It has an example in there where it's talking about maybe you've got a French restaurant and then there's a review in English where it's hitting on the dish name that might be in French, and it has the ability to detect this is in English and this piece is in French, which might be the dish name or something like that. So it can detect that. But when it's ambiguous, whether it doesn't know the language or it's using emojis, that's when you're going to get an NAN because it's not in 0 to 1. The 0 to 1 is going to be, how accurate it is. But this NAN is just, it's ambiguous. I don't know what this language is. It's outside of the realm of my understanding. All right, we got 2 more to see who's going to get first. You use translator text to translate messages from Spanish into both English and French. What should you do? Make one call to the service from ES to EN, another to FR. This is talking about that IOC number, right? And translating that number to the ES and ER. Make one call to the service specifying a from ES to EN-FR. We'll make 2 calls, one from ES and to EN, other from ES to FR. Yeah, so just so we can sort of talk about this ES is going to be the representation for Spanish, right? And we had talked about, somebody said, I don't know what that number is. And then somebody in the chat, it's the governance. Oh no, wait. The International Organization of Standardization. So it's ISO number. And so that is a standardized thing of, okay, if I want it, this means Spanish, this means English, this means French. And so if I'm doing this, I'm making a call and I'm saying, I want it from Spanish. And then I, on one side, want to say, I want to change it to English and I want to change it to French. You can sort of think if you guys did like web development, so you have an if check and say, if it's Spanish, and then what's the first line? I want to translate it to English. And the next line is I want to translate it to French, right? It's all sort of in the same condition. Same sort of thing here. I make one call to my service. And then I say, I want to do this and I want to do this. That way, because we get billed based on how many calls we have. So however many times we use the service back and forth, that's how sort of in the computing process and a bunch of different things. But that's one of the big ways that they can charge you. So we want to make sure we have one call and it's the most efficient way. Sort of like if we were querying a database in Flask or in SQL, right? When we're using Flask to query a SQL database, we really just want to do one query and then deal with that information. I don't want to have multiple queries within really, a function or something like that. Same sort of thing here. We want to make one call and then that call does everything for us and returns back that information. All right, last one. You want to use speech to transcribe phone calls and use text analytics to extract key phrases. What should you create? Speech, cognitive services, or text analytics? This is for the win, maybe. Maybe not. I don't know. Transcribe phone calls and you want to use text analytics to extract key phrases. Yeah, it's going to be cognitive services, right? I have multiple tools I want to use. I'm going to use the bundle for that. All right, friends, let's see how you guys did. So for the podium, in 3rd place, we've got Hi. Is it Hi? Hey. And 13. And then in 1st place, the man, the myth, the legend, the Doug. Way to go, Doug. 31 out of 38. That's great. That's a really great job. Good job, Mark and Vince and everybody who participated and had fun. I hope that this was something that was fun and a great way sort of to learn and sort of reinforce some of these ideas. I know that this was a lot of information. So great job. You guys got 71% correct. So that is incredible. First towards the end, we got a little bit harder. That's okay. So these were our difficult questions. So maybe we can look at these again. Which module should you use to infer cluster predictions? Show the answers. It's going to be assign data to clusters. Remember, because we have a unsupervised, we don't have any sort of scoring. We just assign our data to our clusters. You plan to use the form recognizer pre-built. This was the one that I hated too. technically form recognizer and cognitive services work because it doesn't say, you're trying to save money or anything. But I understand why only form recognizer was there. So I would give you guys a gimme on that one. Trying to deploy an object detection model. You are one resource with the same key and endpoint for training and prediction. It is cognitive services. Again, I think that was probably one of the first ones we did with this, but the same key and endpoint. If you're using multiple things, we're going to use our bundle, which is our cognitive services. You use machine learning designer to create a pipeline. What must you do before deploying? It's going to be that create an inference pipeline from the training. This evaluate model is part of our training pipeline. So if that is going to be complete, if we want to deploy, this already has to be complete. So we wouldn't add this again. We would create an inference pipeline. Translator text into both. This one was hard, but we're going to make one call to the service. It's going to say from Spanish to English, another to French, right? So I'm going to do it multiple times. And then last one, you plan to use computer vision to read large text. This is the read API, does large text. The OCR just does little text within an image. Great job though, guys. I hope that was fun. So what is next is our last piece. We're done. Sort of voucher talk. So now go get certified. So we played this game. There are practice tests. I really suggest them. They had 30% off. I don't know if they still do. Yeah, so they still have 30% off if you do together, and I will show you what it sort of looks like. So there are these great practice tests. They're like $8. And so let's say we're doing the AI-900 and I want to take this test. There are different test sets and you can just do practice tests. So it's just exam questions and very similar to exam questions. You have different topics. The AI-900 is a little bit like there's quite a few questions, but I'll show you another one that's a little bit more built out, but there's 10 test sets that you can practice on. Here are some full length test sets. You have a practice mode and an exam mode where here I can do just practice mode. I can do start test and it says select 2 tasks that can be performed by using computer vision service. I can translate text. I can detect faces in an image. Okay, it's green because that's correct. I can train a custom image. Or I can recognize handwritten text. If I click that, oh, that's not it. Is it this one? Oh, that's not it. Okay, it is this one. Cool. So here's my second one. And then it tells you, here's the documentation that allows you to here's the documentation that goes over, that piece and where this is all located at. So it's a great tool. So you can do that for, up to 40 questions. What's the minimum number of features? Let's say 3. Nope, it's not 3. Is it 2? Nope, it's 1. Nope. Okay, so it is 1. So we have to have 1 feature. Okay, cool. So it's just a way that you can do a practice test. The other one is the exam, actual exam, and then it will, this does 90 minutes, just like a normal test. If you do practice, it tells you immediately if you got it right or wrong. For the exam, it doesn't do that. It's sort of like taking the real exam, so you're not going to know until the end how you actually did. So go get certified now. You can sign up for the exam here, and I'll send you you have this. But again, all you do is you go to this one, sign up with Pearson VUE. Once you fill out, you're gonna have to fill out an application, not an application, sorry. You're gonna have to fill out like a profile for Pearson VUE. It's gonna ask for some of your, more personal information. That's why I'm not gonna click it because that's my address and a bunch of stuff. And then you're gonna go through it. You're gonna pick your date, pick the exam, all that stuff. And towards the end, it's gonna ask you for a coupon code. I will be sending out an email tomorrow for the coupon code, and the coupon code is good until June. So this says February, but it is June. So I'll save that. So you'll have your unique coupon code. It is good till June. Again, I would absolutely encourage you guys, especially today, you've gotten a ton of information. I would encourage you to spend $8, get those practice tests, and really try to get it done by the end of the year. If you can get it done before the holidays, it's quick. You've already learned a lot of what's going to be on it today. I would bet if you did a practice exam, you would probably get anywhere from, 60 to 75%. And so that's just something that you can continue to build upon. Do a couple of those, learn the things that you keep missing, and then, go back to take the exam. I would really encourage you to get that set up as soon as you can, because I've just witnessed students sometimes when they don't miss out on the information there. So sign up for advanced. It is remote. It is proctored. So you do have to do that. And again, at the very last step of the checkout with Pearson VUE, that's when you're going to put your coupon code. And then let me know when you get certified. I celebrate this. I found out on Discord today that somebody passed the AZ-900. That's a great thing. It helps me know that I'm doing a good job. I lead our Azure stuff. And so try to make this as insightful and as good. And the whole goal is for me to help you guys sort of round out your profile so that way getting a job is easier, right? And so at least you have this knowledge of AI and you know, using these tools, and get your hands wet, right? Like go get your hands dirty and participate in the Azure stuff. So in the actual, you know, this guy, there are these things called sandboxes where it sort of generates its own profile. So you're not actually going to get charged or anything. If you do create your own Azure profile, you will ask, like if you know, go onto Azure and you sign in and stuff, and you create a profile, it's going to ask you to put in a credit card. As long as you're wise and you're not just like, you know, using all the big resources, you're not going to really get charged. I think you have like $200 the first month anyway, so you're not really going to get charged. But just be smart with that, right? Because if you leave, you know, I was talking to somebody else and they left their data science notebook running on AWS, even though it wasn't really doing anything. It cost them $25 for that month. So be smart, right? Like there's a reason why AWS and Azure are billion-dollar companies, right? So be smart, or Microsoft, I guess, and Amazon, but just be smart with that. But there are some interactive tools that you can do that you don't have to put in a credit card. You don't have to, let's see if I can find one. So they do have knowledge check, but here, this exercise, so create an image, cognitive service, right? So I'm going to go to this portal, Azure. It's going to be, it's free, right? So you can create a custom vision project. So it tells you how to do this, and you walk through, you know, image uploads of an apple. So it can identify if it's a green or a red apple. So this is really cool, right? So I can upload those files, and then I can actually use that tool. And Microsoft allows you to test the model, upload a picture of an apple, and then you can see, like, you can literally create this on Microsoft, and it has you do that, and it shows you piece by piece what to do, how to do it, and even how to put that in your actual code. So let's say you wanted to take that and add that into your code, you could do that too, which is really sweet. So I'd encourage you messing around with this. You will make mistakes. You will get stuck. There's great documentation, but part of being a developer, my friends, is learning how to figure it out. I'd never dealt with Azure. I was able to build that speech to text within 45 minutes just because it was documentation, right? I'm not the best developer in the world. I'm not going to pretend to be. I'm not like some 10x developer. A lot of you guys are probably smarter than me, but you can just, you know, use documentation to figure it out. So that would be my encouragement. Tomorrow, what to expect is I will be sending you an email that's going to have a link to everything. It's going to have a link to the recorded sessions. It's going to have a link to our slide deck that we had. It's going to have a link. And then on the slide deck is all the exercises that we had. So if you did want to do those again for yourself, or maybe you were a little bit late, what would happen is, you know, you could just click that. And if you do, again, as always, you want to work with that, you just make a copy and then you can edit it yourself. So I'll have an access to that. I'll have a link to the practice exams, have a link to the actual exams. So I'll have a link to everything that you need, and I'll send that out tomorrow along with your coupon code. Any questions for you, my friends? I hope that this was good. I hope that you learned something. I hope that it sort of excited you. But I think some of this stuff, like a real application, because I took this on, you know, when I was dealing with students in Costa Rica. So I teach data science on this team. I guess I didn't really introduce myself. I'm a data science instructor. I was a full stack web development instructor, and I've transitioned to the data science team. And I'm helping with Costa Rica. We have a program in Costa Rica, and there's a language barrier between myself and students who speak Spanish. And so I thought, hey, wait, Azure actually has a tool that can take this. And I know Zoom allows for it to take my speech. What if I built that? Right. And so by just having this knowledge, it allows you to sort of think outside the box and say, oh, I know that this is possible technologically. How do I do that? And so even if, you know, you don't make money or you don't build some massive enterprise app, having this knowledge, you can use these tools to do really, really cool things, and even impress your friends of create a custom, you know, model with their face and say, like, whatever, make it say something funny, identify the tag as a potato. And so anytime you put a face, it says, this is a potato. That's hilarious, right? That's like a funny Christmas gift. There you go. Whole application, potato or not potato. Okay. Any questions for your friends?
For Kahoot, can you also send that answer sheet too, so that way we can study from that?
Ooh, great question. I will have to, let me see. I will have to figure out how to do that, but yes, I will figure that might take me a little bit longer because I'll probably have to go in and then just copy paste these because we just created these, you know, like just added a question. So we just hit create. And then
Is it like if you go tap, it just show answers on the right?
Yeah, so
Oh.
these are the answers. So
I thought there was a PDF you can make, but
that would be, see, that would be a great tool for you to web scrape, find the ones that have the square in this inspect thing, right? If I inspect this, I say this, and this guy right here, if it's a square, then I want to pull this guy, whatever this is, use that class to web scrape. And then now you just, and I can create a PDF. There you go. I won't build that. I'll probably just copy and paste if I'm blatantly honest. It'll take me 6 hours to build that versus 30 minutes to copy and paste. But you could do that too. There you go. Yeah, so I'll try to figure out how we can do that, and then that's a good just document to have too. So great question.
Cool, thank you.
Tomorrow for you. Yeah. Anything else, friends? Any other questions for me?